Greetings and good, well, technically afternoon on President's Day, February 19th, 2024. Still the third decade of the 21st century. If you're new to my channel for any reason, I always open with that to sort of highlight the fact we are actually in the third decade of the 21st century. And because growing up, people had hypothesized and theorized as to where we would be as a society, a race of human beings by the 21st century, let alone the third decade. And I always like to point it out because where are we actually? We've probably made certain advancements in areas nobody could have contemplated, but then yet in others, say of a more social nature, I think we're digressing. I think we're going backwards for reasons, is anybody's guess. But with that being said, one of the things I love to do is if you take the time to watch or listen to my video and leave a comment, I like to respond. I apologize for the long pauses, and I also apologize. I'm not going to take the time to study up on, learn, and use editing software. I'm just going to keep it raw and just put it out on the internet. Also, with that being said, I apologize for any delays for people that do enjoy my content from time to time. Quite a bit's going on. Quite a bit has happened. As you can see, my shop has, not really advanced forward in the cleanly and organized direction I would prefer it to be in. It seems like every time I take a couple steps forward, my wife and my daughter set me back like 5 or 8 steps. I love them to pieces, but apparently they still think of this shop as the storage facility it once was, and they just literally put stuff in here, and I'm like, no, this is a workshop. It's my man cave. It's my space. Anyways, I digress. We have also lost 3 pets in the last 7 to 8 weeks. Bella, our oldest dog that we got in Columbus, Ohio when I was stationed there, finally succumbed to, I'm just going to have to call it old age. She was blind. She was losing weight. She was really in bad shape. My wife didn't have the heart to put her down, and thankfully, rather than suffering much longer, she just laid down one Saturday morning and never woke up. And then a few weeks later, our prairie dog, Monster, who we got for Christmas the year our son Logan passed away, he eventually died in his sleep. He just went to sleep one day and never got up. He lived a pretty decent life for a prairie dog as far as length and whatnot. And then lastly, Peanut, our beloved little spaz, our little freakazoid Peanut, the attention whore. He was never quite the same after Bella died. And one night we were going to bed and he was looking a little weird. And that night he did what he did best, is he spent the night in my son's room, crawled under my son's desk, and went to sleep for the last time. So it's been a little emotional there. Also, being that it's February, being that it's the new year, we're always flooded with these emotions that hit us. Because after the turn of the new year in 2015 is when we began our slow descent into what would eventually result in the loss of our son Logan. And good, bad, or indifferent, Facebook is always really good at saying, hey, don't forget about these memories. And I'm guessing it's a computer algorithm that does it, like, hey, don't forget about your memories. And it's like, yeah, thanks, appreciate that one. But in all actuality, thank you for helping me remember my son. Also, my daughter and I have been having some candid conversations, something maybe I'll address at the end of this video, because first and foremost, what I do want to do is I want to read these comments out loud and respond. So the first one is from Mike the Pipe Boss 396. Mike and I served together. Mike and my buddy, Warden Farm, North Carolina. I don't know if you want me to address you by your name. I'll let you tell me in person. Gentlemen, I apologize. I don't know why, but normally I used to get an email on my email account that's associated with this YouTube account, I've gotten nothing. I got no notifications whatsoever that you'd responded to these videos. So I don't know what happened. I'll have to go and check the settings and see if, I don't know. But first one, Mike, responding to my January 17th, 2024 video. I need to fix that. That's 2024. Dirt. All right. Make no mistake, within just a few years, there will be a white identity movement in America. It won't be based in a disdain for people of color, but on the new politics that openly has disparaging intent against white people. They openly preach for a systemic displacement and intentionally putting white people in a place of disadvantage and less opportunity. As for Sidney Smith, our buddy that we served with in the Marines, we just had an interesting exchange on Facebook. A lot of the points of contention he brought up I agree with. The fundamental disagreement between him and myself is the lens we view the problem through. Sidney sees the issues through the lens of race. I see the problems through the lens of class. I don't see today's billionaires any differently than the old industrialists that took advantage of just about everyone for profit. They will move to protect what they've built at any cost. As long as people are fighting each other, then it's easier for them to have control and influence that only advances that you wrote that's only advantageous to them at everyone else's expense. Okay, in all honesty, I've seen Sidney post lots of stuff that's made me raise an eyebrow and shake my head, but I don't really have disparaging things to say about the man. If I saw him in person, again, just like the old Bravo days, I'd shake his hand. He's a working man with a strong personality. These are traits that are disappearing across all demographics. So Sidney, if you read this, I hope you're doing well, and all the best to you and your family. Yeah, so the main point of that video from January 17th was our buddy Sidney, who was a great guy back then, so I'd have to imagine he's still a great guy now. Let me give you some context. So he's been posting some stuff recently that basically, like Mike says, he views it through the lens of systemic racism, that the entire country is out to basically disrupt and put down black people, African American, whatever you use as a phrase or turn of phrase. And I spoke to a coworker who's from the New England area, which is where Sidney Smith is from. And the New England area is a rather large area. It's not Boston. It's a larger area that classifies itself as New England. So if you say you're a New Englander, then from that point forward, a fellow New Englander would ask you, whereabouts are you from? So I asked my coworker what he thought. And after a healthy exchange of information, the long story short is he said, regardless of the source, your friend Sidney, I didn't give him names exactly, but he's like, your friend has been Kaepernicked. And I was like, interesting. He goes, more than likely somebody in his life found him at a low point and is influencing his thought process. And it makes perfect sense because Kaepernick, whose level of play was on the decline, and found himself on the bench, apparently also wound up in the arms of a rather militant, socio-politically active woman who got into his head, and the rest is history. Most of us are pretty familiar with Kaepernick. I don't have any ill feelings towards Sidney. After a lengthy conversation with my daughter, the thing that I despise is the concept of ethnic bigotry. Even more so, I despise the concept that racism in America is a one-way street. It's only white against non-whites with a hyper-focus on black. And that basically means to say that as white people, we don't have any ethnic backgrounds. We're not English. We're not Scottish. We're not Irish. We're not Italian. We're not French. We're not German. We're not Norwegian or Swedish. We're not any other sort of ethnic background that we could potentially have pride in. We're just white. And by that same metric, I can equally understand, too, where people may not be thrilled with black or African American. What I find interesting is when I actually meet legit Africans who've earned their U.S. citizenship and are actual African Americans, they can't stand dealing with a certain population of black America. It's funny. I don't want to necessarily get into the whole thing, but it's interesting. My point being is, yes, technically Africa is a continent, and it's most of the people in Africa have a common appearance. But like towards the northwest, like Egypt, and I think next to it, I think that's Sudan, and Morocco maybe. I really have to get a map, but they have a more Middle Eastern appearance. Whereas you start to get farther south, and back in the day, what they would call Nubian, they take on the more African look. But in any case, I had to express to my daughter how much I despise the concept of ethnic bigotry, but I understand it. Human beings have always sought to find groups, create groups, form bonds and allegiances over things that they may have in common, whether it's ethnicity, nationality, kind of the same thing, music, whatever the case may be. Birds of a feather will flock together. Like attracts like. And sometimes that can create a sense of bigotry. Well, you disagree with us, or we disagree with you, or we're better than you, whatever the case may be. And I've always despised it, just as a concept. And I'm no what's the word I'm looking for? It's not lost on me that there was a significant amount of ethnic bigotry towards non-white people, specifically with a hyper focus on the black Americans that were the descendants of slaves, specifically in the South. What I find so funny is the people that are the most vocal, the people that are the most active in this white guilt concept are up north. The people from the north that had absolutely nothing to do with it. People that were not born of the industrial class that abused all people of all nationalities in order to advance themselves. These are the people that are helping perpetuate this concept of white guilt that's leading to this concept that Mike is talking about, where you could see this white movement where eventually white people are going to be like, enough, enough. I am not responsible for your problems. I'm responsible for my own problems, and I have enough of those as it is. I don't need to feel like shit because your life sucks based on the sum total of your own choices, all right? Your skin color has nothing to do with it. You make shitty choices, you get shitty results. Maybe you're just a shitty person. Has nothing to do with your ethnicity. But you decided to make it a thing about ethnicity. You decided to blame all white people for all of your problems. And yeah, I think Mike's right. I think we could potentially see in the near future some sort of white identity movement, yet not focused on anti-people of color. Just quit blaming me for your shit. Own up to your own shit. Take accountability for your own shit. So yeah, Mike, I agree. And I would hate to see it progress beyond that. But we know it will. We know that if there is some sort of white identity movement, a small population of that movement will be militant. Just like I'm sure with this black identity movement or this people of color identity movement, whatever you want to call it, there are people that probably have less than pure intentions and would like to do less than pure things. Mike, I hope that sort of answers that. Plus, you and I had a 4-hour plus long phone call the other night, a couple of weeks ago. That was quite interesting. Mike and I haven't seen each other since probably 98, 99, so we had a lot of catching up to do. And then Warden Farm. It's all about people with money, like George Soros wanting to make a big divide in us all. The Democrats are just as bad, wanting to open borders for reasons they are creating. POTUS stating he wants Texas open so men of fighting age can come into the country, stating he'll unleash F-15s on his own people, but not on illegal immigrants. Please. Yeah, at one point my thoughts against the Democratic Party were strictly emotionally based, primarily stemming from Clinton and the Clinton era. I was not a huge fan of Bill Clinton and some of his policies. Being an active duty service member at the time when he got caught having an affair with Monica Lewinsky, and that's a court-martialable offense for us, and so many people, to include members of the armed forces, were like, it's like, no, no. The commander-in-chief does not need congressional approval to send the Marines into combat. And he doesn't have to declare war to send the Marines into combat. Yeah, you should absolutely have a higher standard of your president, your commander-in-chief. No, unacceptable. And some of these guys that felt that way, I'm very close with. And it blows my mind sometimes. But I think the worst thing we can do is try to convince people that they're wrong and we're right. I've never liked the Democratic Party, and I started to do my research to see if maybe I had any better reasons. And quite frankly, yeah, I think the Democratic Party, ever since their inception, ever since they created themselves, has sought to do nothing but divide the country. And to what ends, I don't know. Do I think modern elected Democrats have the ambitions of the people funding them? No, I think the people funding Democrats have a different idea of their desired outcome than the people that are running for office. But I think in the end, the Democratic Party is the one that wants division. And forgive me for wearing my tinfoil hat for a moment, but I think ultimately the Democratic Party would like to see some sort of race war, because I think ultimately they have a good idea of who might prevail. In which case it would, regardless of who would prevail, it could potentially reduce our numbers and provide for the opportunity of a militarized state, a form of martial law, where we become more fascist and more socialist, and we basically have to invite the government to take control of every aspect of our life under the guise of protection and order. So, all right, tinfoil hat's coming off. Beyond that, you know, I've been, you know, still immersing myself in stuff here and there, you know, and not trying to overly immerse myself to the point of frustration. But one thing I've noticed, and I've probably mentioned this numerous times, and I'll bring up my daughter at the end. I was watching Bill Maher recently, and he had Patrick Bet-David on. Now, Bill Maher is not afraid to have people on his individual podcast called Club Random that he will openly disagree with, to include political candidates that he will openly disagree with. And Bill Maher will also state that, yes, if he disagrees with the left and or the Democratic Party or whatever the case may be, that he will disagree and he'll call them out. But there's one key factor that I keep picking up on. I can't imagine I'm alone. I can't imagine I'm the only one. I mean, I'm relatively smart, but I think the true test of intelligence is how you use it and how you're responded to and reacted to by other people. So I don't want to necessarily call myself intelligent, but if you ever watch Bill Maher, essentially when it comes to Trump or the Republican Party, but specifically Trump, he goes apoplectic. Like his unfiltered emotional response to the point of irrationality is amazing. And why do I point that out? Because as rational as I think Bill Maher can be, as intelligent as I think Bill Maher can be, at an emotional level, when it comes to Trump and possibly the Republican Party for his own personal reasons, he loses all ration. He gets completely emotional, and he essentially loses his mind. He goes apoplectic, like I said. I wish Bill Maher could see himself the way I do for this reason and this reason alone. I wonder if Bill could appreciate that. If he can be that way, so too could others. And that's one of the hardest things I've had to wrap my head around. Because who's who's to say I'm not exactly the opposite when it comes to, I don't know, the Democratic Party in general? You know, you start bringing up the Democratic Party and their principles and their philosophies, and perhaps maybe I get very emotional and I go apoplectic. I recognized this probably going on 2 years ago, because unfortunately I'm in an age where time goes by a lot faster than I would like it to. That if you can see the same emotion in somebody else, can you also see that emotion in yourself? Like when I watch Bill Maher go emotionally, irrationally apoplectic over the mention of Trump, and that he can't see anything good, he can't even discuss Trump in a positive manner whatsoever, can he at least appreciate that other people can feel the exact same way about the Democratic Party or certain Democratic people like Biden or Kamala Harris or whatnot? I'm just curious if he can appreciate that, and I'm curious if you, the listener, viewer, however you're receiving this, if you can do the same thing. If you can be like, man, you know, if I can absolutely lose my mind and go ape shit over a particular topic, can I at least appreciate how somebody else can feel the same way and react the same way to a topic I'm in favor of? And that brings me to my daughter. My daughter and I have had some candid conversations over the past few years, specifically right around her junior year in high school up until the present. And with this whole Sydney thing and other things, because the thing with Sydney really shocked me when I thought back to the man I used to know back in the day. And she asked me, you know, some probing questions, so I answered her, and I'll try to do this in less than 10 minutes so I don't go over half an hour. No promises. So if you take things back, all right, because I believe we are the sum total of our decisions, and those decisions can also produce the sum total of our experiences, which forge who we are. So up until 8th grade, I lived in rental properties, apartments, apartment complexes, you name it, where most of us were low income. And I don't know what it was, but I guess income was the great unifier. Race was never an issue. Race was never a thing. We understood race, we looked differently, but so help me God, none of us cared. We all played and fought and, you know, kissed and made up. Well, maybe not kissed, but, you know, we all just got along. Because if for no other reason, we were part of the have-nots. And there were probably others who had less than us. But we were clearly separated from those who lived in houses who were so much better than us because they had a mortgage. All right, cool. That's what I remember from the 80s. In 1989, I moved to a suburb outside of Chicago. My parents still worked in the city, but it was a pretty simple commute. They just had to jump on I-55 and go northeast. I'm sorry. And I had already started 8th grade somewhere else, so I had to literally move, I think sometime around the end of the first quarter, to this new town. I've always moved a lot, but I always had a chance to start school at the beginning of the school year. I didn't have to switch schools midway through. And a lot of things happened, but I'll try to simplify it. I moved into an established neighborhood where the kids knew each other since diapers, and they received me well enough, but I was always, I wouldn't say bullied. I think bullied implies an overly dramatic sense of meaning, but I was picked on. I was the odd guy out. I was the new kid, so I got the stereotypical new kid treatment. And it eventually reached a point that I didn't want to deal with anymore. And by about my sophomore year, I elected to make a change. Also with that was the first time I was exposed to any kind of ethnic bigotry where African American / black was very proud of their skin complexion and thought less of white people and tried to pick on other white people as a result. Of course, being a new kid, you would always get tested with this. Now, I don't know how sincere they were with their racial epitaphs, but it was the first time I ever had to deal with that of any kind. You move into high school, and freshman year, you know, you're blending a handful of different junior highs, now called middle schools, together, and people are trying to feel each other out. You know, the one thing about my particular school district was one middle school provided the majority of students, and two other middle schools provided a smaller amount of students. So a smaller amount came from my junior high, the majority came from another junior high, so they kind of felt like they were the cock of the walk because they had the numbers. And there was a little bit of racial this and racial that, and then eventually it just sort of got to the point where you reach an equilibrium where, okay, so some of the black students are very proud of their black skin, and, you know, for whatever reason, they're allowed to wear clothing and express the fact that they're proud of their skin complexion. And, oh, look, the Latinos are also allowed to express pride in their brown skin or pride in their ethnic background. You know, Viva la raza, Aslan, so on and so forth. But I don't know, maybe as a kid you're just like, whatever, the wind blows this way, I go with the wind. You know, and you just kind of whatever. No big deal. The only time it really ever came up is I had the potential to date this one girl who happened to be Mexican. I knew her brothers. And then when it got to the point where we were like, hey, you want to go on a date? And the brother's like, yeah, man, not cool. We can still be cool as long as you stop this. And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, we can't risk, you know, tainting the bloodline. And I was like, well, I appreciate the fact you think I got that much game that, you know, your sister would give it up like that. But they're like, nah, I mean, we know you, but still, it's not something our family's cool with, at least not yet, so we're just giving you a heads up. And I was like, okay, roger that. And again, it must have been a thing that when I was younger, it just rolled off my back a lot easier. Then I joined the Marine Corps, and for those that are uninitiated, and you haven't seen previous videos, if you were in the Central, Mountain, or Pacific time zone, you went to MCRD San Diego for boot camp. Anybody in the Eastern time zone went to Paris Island for boot camp. So I wind up at MCRD San Diego. Now, if you're not aware, again, within the Central time zone, you have, I believe, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas, and obviously Missouri, Oklahoma, and whatnot. Some of those states were part of the Confederacy, and some of those states practiced Jim Crow up until 1964. So we had a couple of guys that I think were from northern Louisiana that were black, and my God, did they hate white boys. Oh my God. Like, you know, you ever see the Friday After Next or whatever, or Next Friday, Friday Part 2? You know, what are you, a baller or something? Yeah, I'm with the Cucamonga Cracker Killers. These guys were the Cucamonga Cracker Killers. Whatever part of Louisiana they were from, however they were raised, they fucking hated white people. And for all intents and purposes, they hated anybody that wasn't them. And then I also met, you know, some Latinos from like Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, and whatnot. And they were on a whole new level of brown pride that I was not familiar with in Chicago. So eventually what happened was those of us that were from the north, not from below the Mason-Dixon or whatever, and were from major cities where everybody just kind of got along, we sort of created our own little group, and then the other guys, and I hate to say it, but when I started boot camp, I didn't graduate with the same platoon, but we had cliques. It just is what it is. We had cliques. One thing I will say is back then in the early 90s, Texas and California were the two main states where people had the most pride in their state. Everybody else was more proud to be from like a city or something. But anyways, then I get to Hawaii, and while, you know, depending on where they were from, some blacks were very proud of their skin complexion, some browns were very proud of their skin complexion, or they were very proud of what particular region from South America they hail from. And then we did meet some whites who were from certain parts where you know, you didn't want to risk stereotyping them, but after getting to know them, oh no, you live up to that stereotype. You are, yep, you know, probably still got hoods and robes somewhere in a coat closet somewhere. But the cool thing was, with being in Hawaii, while you could try to play those games, essentially you had to deal with it out in town mostly, where if you weren't careful, if you perhaps didn't conduct yourself the right way, the local Polynesians, and I say Polynesians because it's not just full-blown Hawaiians. You had Samoans, you had Tongans, you had Fijians, you had people from all over Polynesia that were on the island of Oahu. And, you know, they would sometimes take advantage of their size and take advantage of their numbers, and they would beat up on haoles, foreigners. They targeted mostly whites, but on occasion they would target blacks and they would target brown. Asian, not so much. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't target Asians, but, you know, in my 6 years in Hawaii, we had some of our brown brothers get beaten up, we had some of our black brothers get beaten up, and some of our white brothers get beaten up. So, you know, at least the Polynesians were pretty indiscriminate. If you weren't them, then you were a target. But for the most part, the whole, you know, racial seriousness was kind of, it just wasn't really there. And things are kind of cool. Then I go to Bridgeport, again, you know, no real major ethnocentrism whatsoever. You know, things are pretty level. Then I come out to Lejeune, and same thing. You know, I had some weird notions about Lejeune, but otherwise, no, nothing ever panned out. You know, Lejeune was pretty even-keeled, you know, no major racial anything. And then I PCS to Columbus, Ohio, where I'm on I&I duty. And then, boom. But let me stop. Before that, we start, you know, before that, right? Remember, sum total of our experiences. The main reason we went to Columbus, Ohio was for our son. And that was after having spent over 100 days at the Ronald McDonald House in Chapel Hill. And some of the crap I saw, some of the worst of human behavior I saw at the Ronald McDonald House in Chapel Hill, more or less scarred me emotionally for life, and has had a significant impact on me in the way I view the world and people. Then we go to Columbus, Ohio, and it was the election year. It was the year Obama and McCain were running, and it was like, oh, God, McCain. And then it was like, you know, I won't vote for a Democrat, but for some reason, the short version is there were 3 people there. They didn't share my complexion. They were voting for Obama because, you know, they were voting for Obama. And when I made the mistake of indulging in the conversation, and I was like, no, I'm not going to vote for Obama, boom, I'm a racist. And everything from that point forward was all racial. The 3 of them were very racial until one of them would eventually PCS away. And then the other 2 that were left, a civilian contractor and another guy, were always very racial. Everything was ethnically biased with them. And they used to love to accuse people of racism. Like, just, hey, today's Tuesday. Who's a white racist? And that, you know, I'm already there for a specific reason. I'm there because of my son's health. And I'm like, do I need this? No, I don't need this. And perhaps because I was distracted by my son's health, I couldn't see clear enough to disengage. I apologize. My upper lip is itching. I couldn't see clear enough to disengage, but from time to time I would engage, and I realized what a mistake that was now. But I'm explaining all this to my daughter. And then, you know, I come back here, no problems. I retire. I move out to Raleigh. I get a job. And then, boom, shortly after our son passes away, which is a horrific event, I have 3 black females making allegations against me for reasons I don't know. I would eventually hear later in confidence from a co-worker while I was still working for the company, but a different contract site, that something had happened and that the 3 of them were all friends, One of them was very racially motivated and was known for being the racial instigator. And I'm trying to paraphrase this, but it basically tried to see how far they could get with allegations against a white heterosexual male. So, you know, that was obviously a negative experience, but I try really hard to be open-minded. But it's kind of made me hypersensitive to certain things. It's made me hypersensitive to the fact that, like, okay, is this person overly invested in their skin complexion? And as a result of which, are they constantly looking for reasons to be offended by anything? Also, are they constantly looking for reasons to make accusations? It's like walking on eggshells with people of color. Thus, I can see why Mike made the statement he made, where how much longer can we walk on eggshells before we just stand up for ourselves? Like, no, fuck this. You are who you are. I judge you by the content of your character, not by the color of your skin. You're a piece of shit. Oh, because I look brown? No, no, no. You're a piece of shit because the content of your character, the sum total of who you are, is a piece of shit. You're a turd of humanity and you need to get flushed. And I think that goes to Mike's point. It's not going to be about what you look like. It's going to be about the content of your character. And if you make your physical appearance more about your character than your actions, then I can see where we might reach that point. So, you know, I explained all this to my daughter, and I was like, it makes it difficult moving forward because you have to understand and appreciate that right now, in the third decade of the 21st century, there are people putting such an emphasis, they're putting such a measured level of importance on their skin complexion, not their abilities, their sexual preference, not their abilities, their gender identity, not their abilities. God, did I leave anything out? Sexual preference, skin color, gender identity. I mean, you know, all these things that really have no impact on whether or not you can do a job. And it's getting to the point where it's reaching a fever pitch. Like, you know, like major airlines are announcing we're going to start investing in diversity, equity, and equality and inclusion. And it's like, so basically what you're saying is you want to focus on not hiring white people or heterosexual white people. Not the most qualified for the job, but specifically hiring people just based on how they look or how they identify. And I think it's insane. And what really scares me is, depending on the profession and depending on where ability is more important than your outward, you know, how you look, your skin complexion, your sexual preference, your gender ideology, your pronoun usage, when ability is the defining factor and we put people in positions that lack the ability and there's catastrophic consequences, it is what it is. There's no arguing against it. But yet we have people entertaining the concept that no, your complexion overrides ability. Your gender preference, your sexual preference, your pronoun preference supersedes ability. And because we're recognizing this, we're minimizing risk. Minimizing risk in what particular area, though? Because if we're talking about something like flying a goddamn airplane, all right, a bus with wings that normally gets to about 30,000 feet above sea level, I might want the most qualified, capable person flying the plane. Not the person who is confused about their gender, confused about their pronouns, and is so self-consumed by their outward appearance. All right? I may be more concerned about who can actually physically fly the plane. So, you know, I was telling my daughter how much I despise this. That common sense would be, no, we're looking for ability. Now, if you're stating that you may have overlooked people in lieu of their ability, that is an entirely different subject. If you're like, look, we're going to try to focus more so on people of color. We're going to try to focus more so on, say, LGBTQIA+, to find legitimately qualified applicants. I understand that, but that's not the way it's being presented. Whoever's in the cockpit flying the plane, and I'm just using that one particular reference, I don't care who you sleep with. I don't give a shit about your pronouns. I don't give a shit what you look like, because I can't fucking see you in the cockpit. I'm usually flying in coach. I'm just hoping the damn plane doesn't fall out of the sky, which means I'm hoping the people that service the plane, the mechanics and whatnot, are equally qualified to make sure that the plane doesn't fall out of the sky. All right? I'm more concerned that when it comes time to land, you can physically land the plane. I don't give a shit about anything else. If I can walk off the plane because it's landed safely and made its way to the terminal with all of my luggage and all of my limbs and everything, I don't fucking care. I don't care. But I think we need to approach this with caution, because I think it's being presented in a very, very dangerous manner, and I don't know why. I don't know if they're trying to convey a certain message a certain way to attract a certain a certain portion of the population, while equally in opposite rejecting another portion of the population. But man, I've been going for 40 minutes and I apologize. Here's the deal. If you're new to my channel, you know, I'm not all about the notification bells, the subscriptions, and the likes. I'm not in this for monetization. I'm really in this for two major reasons. One, it's cathartic for me. It's kind of like my own personal therapy. And two, I think it's important we have these conversations. You don't have to agree with me. All right? You don't. In fact, I prefer to hear from people that disagree with me, as long as you can maintain some emotional objectivity, as long as you can maintain some rational objectivity, and be like, you know, as an LGBTQIA plus member, or as a member of, you know, as a African American, or a, you know, Latinx, or whatever, you know, because you're right. As a heterosexual Caucasian male, I will never know what it's like to be African American. I'll never know what it's like to be Latinx or Asian or anything else for that matter. So you're right. I can't see things through your eyes. All right? But I think we need to be able to have these conversations. Like at least Bill Marsh trying to have these conversations. I just wish he could see how he responds and reacts to certain topics, and appreciate the fact that other people might respond and react the same to topics that he's in favor of. With that being said, I need to shut the hell up, because if I don't, it'll be 45 minutes to an hour. So if you respond, I promise I will read and react to your responses. Till then, be safe. You're awesome.